Hello, old bull here. They just don't say it out loud, but they're out there. In the silence between shifts. In the pause between chopping firewood and lighting the campfire. In the man changing your oil. In the woman who still values respect. This world might make you feel like the last real man standing, but you're not. See, this modern culture has a strange way of shouting nonsense and silencing truth. The loudest voices don't always speak for the many. They just echo off the walls of empty rooms. Meanwhile, men like you, men with discipline, honor, faith, and scars, are quietly holding their ground, working their land, raising their families, doing what's right even when no one's clapping. And here's the truth no one tells you. Feeling alone in today's world doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. A stoic man who hasn't sold his soul for trends. A quiet protector who still believes in strength of character over popularity. So, if you've been wondering whether there's anyone left who thinks like you, lives like you, feels like you, this message is for you. Sometimes loneliness feels like a storm that only hovers over our own head. You walk into a room full of people and yet feel like the last man standing in an abandoned campfire circle. But here's the truth that most don't realize. Loneliness ain't always a personal flaw or some rare curse. It's not a you problem, it's a we problem. It's a quiet epidemic that crept into our towns and backyards, disguised as modern life, stealing the campfires, the porch chairs, the conversations over chores. You're not alone because you're different. You're alone because most people feel the exact same way and just don't say it out loud. It's like every man took his saddle and rode off into his own quiet canyon, thinking no one else took that same trail. We assume the silence around us means we're the only one feeling out of place. But in truth, we're a herd scattered by the noise of shallow distractions. That man in the booth next to you at the diner, he's likely fighting the same quiet battle inside. The truck driver you passed on the road, he's carrying more than just freight. The good man working the night shift or raising his kids alone, he too wonders if anyone out there still believes in loyalty, quiet strength, and doing what's right, even when no one's watching. See, we used to live in a world where solitude was a choice. When you'd hike to the river to be with your thoughts, not because you were exiled from the noise, but because you needed a break from community. Today, solitude has become default. The firewood stack's still high, but no one sits long enough to let the flame breathe. That's not how manhood was meant to be lived. A real man, a good man, wasn't designed to carry the full weight of the world in silence, but the world tricked us into thinking strength meant isolation. And now, too many warriors are out there, tired, broken, worn out, not because they failed, but because they forgot we're in this together. When I talk about brotherhood, I don't mean some fancy handshake or clubhouse ritual. I mean the old soul who sees your boots and nods because he knows they've walked through fire too. I mean the stoic man who doesn't say much but would stand beside you in a storm. We're not scattered because we're weak. We're scattered because we've been taught to suffer in silence, to burn out alone, to fight inside and never show the scars. But hear this. Even when the campfire feels cold, you're not the only one holding on to the ember. There are others like you, still here, still walking, still refusing to quit. And that's the beginning of something powerful. Because once we understand that loneliness isn't unique to us, that it's a condition shared by thousands of other strong men hiding their weariness under quiet smiles. We can start doing what real men do, building again, reconnecting, putting down the rifle and extending a hand. That first nod across the room might just be the rope someone's been waiting on. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you feel alone in the crowd, you'll remember there's a whole brotherhood out there just waiting for one of us to speak first. Sometimes the loudest recognition comes without a single word. You walk past a man at the feed store. He's got worn boots, grease under his fingernails. A quiet nod that means, I see you. And that's enough. That right there is silent identification. It's the way good men, real men, spot one another without needing to prove anything. A glance, a gesture, maybe a shared grunt while stacking firewood. That's all it takes. You don't need to explain who you are when your life speaks louder than your voice. Brotherhood doesn't always announce itself with big speeches. It shows up quietly, respectfully, and stays when the noise dies down. It's not about forming cliques or waving flags. It's about recognizing shared values without putting them on display like cheap merchandise. You ever notice how some of the strongest men in the room are also the quietest? They don't need applause, they don't ask for validation. But when they see another man stand firm in his beliefs, when they spot that quiet strength, they know. There's a kind of unspoken language among those who've walked through fire and come out scarred, but still standing. They carry the weight, they carry the regret, and they carry the responsibility. And they don't complain. That's manhood. Now, that kind of identification matters more than people realize. In a world drunk on performance and filtered perfection, spotting authenticity is like seeing smoke in the distance. You know someone's tending a real fire. And when two men find that in each other, something subtle shifts. They might not talk about feelings. Hell, they might never share a coffee. But they'll hold the line for each other in a moment of need. A good man doesn't need a reason to be loyal. He just is. And the more we remember that, the more we realize we're never truly walking alone, even when no one's talking. It's funny how some of the most important bonds in a man's life are built on moments that outsiders would call insignificant. Fixing a truck side by side, sitting in silence around a campfire, handing someone a tool before they ask. That's where identity meets connection, not in the words, but in the rhythm of shared values. You can spot a warrior by the way he watches before he speaks. You can see a protector in the way he steps forward without drawing attention to himself. And when you find those men, whether it's on the horse trail or in a diner booth, you feel safer, not just in the world, but in yourself. So if you're out there feeling invisible, keep your eyes open. Look for the subtle signs. The worn ball cap that speaks of hard work. The man who still says, yes, sir, and means it. The pipe smoke curling from a back porch where someone's deep in thought. That's not just scenery, it's a signal. You're not the only one holding on to the old ways. You're not the last man left who values truth, grit, faith, and duty. You're part of a bigger brotherhood, one built on silent nods and solid ground. And once you learn to recognize it, you'll start to see it everywhere. There's something about the holidays that hits harder than any other time of year. You can be doing just fine. Holding steady with your routine, work, prayer, chores, rest, And then November rolls in. December follows close behind, bringing lights, music, and crowds of smiling families. And suddenly, a man who's been strong all year starts feeling the weight. Not because he's weaker now, but because the world around him is shouting joy, while his own silence gets louder. It's not the loneliness that changes, it's the contrast that stings. I remember one Christmas I was out in the wilderness with only my gear, my horse, and a tin mug of coffee. The snow was falling heavy, and I had a cigar lit under a tarp roof. There was no tree, no presents, no family gathering. And that quiet, God, it was thick. But the thing that surprised me most wasn't the solitude. It was how deep the ache ran. Not for the absence of celebration, but for the presence of what I hadn't yet built. A strong family legacy. A warm home to ride back to. Holidays don't create emptiness. They reveal it. You see, when the world slows down for celebration, the man who's carrying regret, broken ties, or scars from the past starts feeling every ounce of that weight. That's when the campfire gets colder. That's when the boots feel heavier. And that's when the quiet pain creeps in. Not with drama, not with noise, but like a fog settling over the soul. We don't always talk about it because real men don't beg for sympathy. But let me tell you, being a stoic man doesn't mean pretending it doesn't hurt. It means learning how to walk through it with purpose. For some, the holidays bring back ghosts of a father who left too early, of a brother who drifted away, of a wife who didn't stay, or a family that never was. And the dangerous part isn't just the sadness, it's the illusion that everyone else has it all figured out, that every other husband is putting up Christmas lights on a perfect home with smiling kids and a well-set table. But you and I both know that ain't always the truth. Most folks are battling something behind the curtain. The strong ones just do it quietly. So, if you feel that sting this time of year, I want you to know something. You're not broken. You're human. You're carrying scars, not signs of failure. And that weight you feel, it means you care. It means you're alive. And it means you've still got something left to build, protect, or heal. That's where manhood shines. When a man stands firm, even in the cold of a holiday night, and says, I'm still here. I'm not quitting. I'm not folding. Because when that kind of man keeps walking, he gives others permission to keep walking too. You might not see the flag, but the brotherhood is real. Scattered across this land, from frozen mountain passes to back road diners and truck stops at 3 a.m., there are men and women living by a quiet code, one that doesn't need fanfare or a logo to be real. These are invisible communities, not because they're hiding, but because they aren't screaming for attention. They just live it. Men with calloused hands and weathered hearts. Women with a steel backbone and a warm gaze. They don't broadcast their values. They embody them. You ever stop for gas and the old boy at pump 6 gives you a nod? Or pass a lady in the aisle who's still teaching her kids, yes, sir, and no, ma'am? You just spotted your people. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it's real. These strong men and good women aren't following hashtags or chasing applause. They're following a compass that points true north. Responsibility, respect, and quiet strength. They don't need to be told to stand up for what's right. They do it because it's in their blood. You won't always hear them, but you'll feel them, like the smell of campfire smoke that clings to your coat long after the fire's gone out. And I'll tell you, there's something beautiful about that kind of quiet agreement. No need for meetings, no need for permission. Just 1,000 silent agreements happening in parking lots, break rooms, and out by the fence line. A nod, a shared silence, maybe a story passed over black coffee. And that's all it takes. These invisible communities aren't just holding the line. They are the line. They're the ones raising sons to be men, teaching daughters their worth, keeping faith alive not through performance, but through perseverance. We've been trained to think community means membership cards or group photos, but the real ones are formed on job sites in saddle leather and by firelight. The real ones are the grandfathers who passed down wisdom over whittled sticks. The cowboys who live by an old code they never bothered to write down. The truck drivers, hunters, and fathers who know that a man's word still matters. You may never all sit in the same room, but you're tied by something deeper. Legacy, meaning, manhood. So if you're out there thinking you're the only one who still believes in discipline and faith in a world where silence can carry more truth than 1,000 tweets, take heart. You're not just part of something. You're part of a movement. You just haven't seen the full circle of it yet. But once you start recognizing the signs, the look, the grit, the posture, you'll realize you're not walking alone. You're just walking among men who don't need to be seen to be known. You ever notice that the loudest voices usually don't speak for the most people? That's because the silent majority, the men and women who carry this country on their backs, aren't out there yelling on rooftops or trending on social media. They're too busy working, raising families, and holding the line. They don't need applause to do the right thing. They don't crave a spotlight to stand firm in their values. They just do it, quietly, consistently, like firewood stacked neatly before the storm, like boots worn from purpose, not fashion. These folks are the foundation, not the furniture. Now, culture today makes a lot of noise, shiny ideals, fast movements, loud demands. But what it often lacks is root. You can't grow something meaningful on ground that keeps shifting. That's where the silent majority comes in. We're the steady hands keeping the compass from spinning. The strong men raising daughters with backbone and sons with direction. The good women still believing in grace, dignity, and self-respect. Our influence isn't flashy, but it runs deep. Like mountain air, it shapes the landscape, whether folks notice or not. When times get tough, and they always do, it's not the noisemakers who steady the ship. It's the stoic men who've weathered storms before, the grandfathers who've seen cycles rise and fall, the mothers who hold the family together with prayer and grit. When the power flickers, you don't call the protester, you call the neighbor with the generator and the quiet heart. That's the real manhood this world forgets until it's needed. And when it's needed, it shows up. Not with speeches, but with gear loaded in the truck and coffee brewing by the fire. But let me warn you, this silence is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's a chosen discipline. A quiet strength forged in solitude, shaped by reflection, and sharpened by responsibility. The louder world assumes it owns the truth because it owns the microphone. But truth isn't volume. It's character. And when that silent majority finally speaks, when it steps forward, not to demand attention, but to protect the legacy, it changes everything. Not through force, but through presence. Like cigars by the saddle, like boots at the door. Our kind doesn't disappear. We wait, we endure, and when it's time, we act. So if you feel outnumbered, outvoiced, overlooked, don't buy that lie. You're not the minority. You're just the kind that doesn't need applause to live with meaning and purpose. You're the kind who holds discipline when it's not popular, who shows respect when the world spits sarcasm. And you're not alone. You're part of the strongest force no one sees coming, the ones who've never left their post. I've seen a lot of strong men fall apart, not from war, not from failure, but from silence. Not the noble kind of silence, the quiet strength of a stoic man, but a kind that builds walls instead of bridges. The kind that keeps your pain bottled up so long you forget what it feels like to share it, and I get it. We were raised to carry weight, not cry about it, to push through, not speak up. But there's a difference between being strong and being stone. And the truth is, real manhood means knowing when to open up and how. See, most men don't need a therapist. They need a campfire. They need a moment with someone who listens without fixing, who nods without judging, maybe with a cigar burning slow and a little pipe smoke in the wind, just letting things breathe. I've had conversations in the bed of a truck, in a horse trail, under a canvas tent, that did more for a man's soul than 1,000 books ever could. And it wasn't about pouring out everything. It was about feeling safe enough to speak at all. And knowing your words wouldn't bounce off a wall, but land. That's why communication isn't about being eloquent. It's about being honest. It's about lowering the drawbridge when it's easier to raise the walls. It's saying, I'm tired, I'm lost, I'm trying, not for pity, but for connection. It's learning how to ask your buddy how he's really doing and sticking around for the answer. You don't need a PhD in psychology to help a man find his footing. Sometimes you just need to shut up and listen, pass the coffee and say, I've been there too. Now, I'm not talking about blabbing your business to strangers. I'm talking about building brotherhood, about creating spaces where fathers, husbands, providers, warriors can lay down the armor for a bit, where worn-out boots can rest and a man can speak without performing. And if you're wondering where to start small. Share one thing you've been holding in. Ask one meaningful question. Drop one word of encouragement. That's all it takes to crack open the dam. And once it flows, healing comes through like spring thaw through mountain rivers. Because if we don't communicate, we calcify, we grow hard, brittle, alone. And that's no way to live. Not for a cowboy, not for a protector, not for any man trying to walk this narrow road with dignity. Communication is a rope we toss each other when we're stuck in a pit. It's not weakness, it's responsibility. So keep talking, friend. Keep listening. That's how we survive. That's how we rise again. And the next time you sit by a fire, maybe pass that truth along. Because someone near you might be carrying weight, just waiting for a reason to speak. There's a quiet kind of friendship that doesn't come from shared hobbies or proximity, but from shared values. You see, there's a difference between having someone to hang out with on a Saturday and having someone who'd help you change a tire at midnight in the rain. We live in a world that teaches men to chase connection through romance, as if the only way to fill that emptiness is with a partner. But real men, older men, good men, stoic men, they know that brotherhood can be just as life-saving as love, sometimes even more. I've seen men come alive again, not because they fell in love, but because they found a campfire and a friend who spoke their language. No small talk, no social games, just two providers sitting side by side, swapping stories and pipe smoke, understanding each other without needing to explain a thing. That kind of friendship doesn't ask, "What do you do for fun?" It asks, "What do you stand for?" And when you find a man whose compass points the same way yours does, toward integrity, discipline, legacy, you hold on to that man like kin. Most men never realize how lonely they are until they find someone they don't have to impress. And when they do, it hits like mountain air after weeks in the valley. That first deep breath of, "I'm seen, I'm understood." It's not about sitting down and saying, "Let's be friends." It's about sharing purpose, walking through silence, and knowing someone has your six without ever having to ask. Friendships rooted in values outlast hardship, outlast distance, and outlast the rush of romance. They endure because they're built on bedrock, not butterflies. So many men today get stuck thinking their deepest needs can only be met by a relationship. And while love is a good thing, it was never meant to carry the full weight of your soul. That's too heavy for one person. But a brotherhood, a real one, that's built on mutual respect, self-respect, and shared responsibility, well, that can carry you through quiet pain, burnout, and every long season of being a man. Romance may fill your heart, but brotherhood will guard it. If you're out there thinking you have no one, start paying attention to the gear, the ball caps, the boots, the way a man shakes your hand. You'll find him. Another cowboy, another fighter, another quiet warrior out there just waiting to be reminded that he's not alone. And when you do, don't try to make it something more. Just make it real. Because when the wind howls and life comes down hard, it won't be romance that keeps you steady. It'll be the man beside you saying, "Keep going. We're in this together." You want to know where the real men are? They're not screaming online. They're not preaching from some high stage. They're out there, quietly fixing furnaces, changing oil filters, laying fence posts in the cold. You won't find them trending. You won't see them posing. But if you look close enough, you'll catch the strength of character in the way they show up on time, the way they treat strangers with respect, the way they carry their responsibility like a man should, with boots on the ground and discipline in the soul. I've sat at truck stops, greasy diners, behind barns after long days, and I've found more wisdom in the calloused hands of a welder than in 100 self-help books. These men might not talk much, but when they do, it's worth listening. There's a quiet strength in the way they say less and do more. You see it when they fix a neighbor's fence without asking for a dime, or when they leave a $10 tip on a $7 meal, not because they're rich, but because they remember what it's like to need help. This brotherhood isn't formed by hashtags or matching shirts. It's formed in welding sparks, muddy boots, and early mornings. And you don't even need to say a word to belong. Just show up, do the work, carry your load. The working class doesn't care what degree you have. They care if you're the kind of man who keeps going when he's worn out. The kind of man who fights inside but still shows up for others. That's the currency down here. Not flash, not ego, integrity. Next time you're at the auto shopper picking up firewood from the guy with the old Chevy truck, don't just nod and move on. Listen, look closer. That man might have buried a wife, raised a daughter, fought 2 jobs, and never quit. He might be burned out, but he's still here. And in that quiet exchange, a handshake, a shared laugh, a half nod, you'll find more manhood than 1,000 social lectures could teach. This world keeps telling us that masculinity is broken, but I've seen it alive and well, dressed in overalls and stained with grease. We don't need to reinvent it. We just need to recognize it, because purpose, identity, and legacy are still being built brick by brick by men who don't shout, but who stand firm in the small, unseen moments that hold this world together. I've lost count of how many men I've met who walked away from church, but never from God. There's a difference, a deep one. It's not that they stopped believing. It's that they couldn't keep sitting in pews built on politics, pride, and performance. They still hold the Bible close, still whisper prayers under their breath, still try to live by a code of integrity and responsibility. But the building, the programs, the noise, that's where the fracture happened. It wasn't faith they abandoned. It was institutional rot pretending to be holy. I've been in those rooms. Sunday morning smiles, Wednesday night gossip. Men judged for the boots on their feet or the scars on their past. Women whispered about because they didn't fit the mold. And all the while, Jesus was nowhere in that building because he never asked for stained glass or coffee bars. He asked for hearts, for humility, for real men who'd stand firm in quiet strength, even when the world or the church misunderstood them. Masculinity has been shamed in those walls. And yet it's stoic men, the ones who don't quit, who've kept the faith alive in barns, cabins, and campfires long after they stopped attending services. Some of the most godly men I've ever known couldn't recite chapter and verse, but they'd give you their last piece of firewood if your hands were cold. They lived a kind of Christianism that doesn't brag. It builds. They were fathers, grandfathers, husbands, providers, men who didn't care for titles but carried purpose in their everyday life. Their spiritual connection wasn't confined to an hour on Sunday. It was woven into every decision, every quiet act of kindness, every battle fought alone. Faith for them was not a show. It was a lifeline. If you've ever felt like you had to leave the church to find God, you're not alone. Maybe you were told your questions were rebellion, that your silence was disinterest. But what they couldn't see, what they refused to understand, is that some of us are old souls. Some of us wrestle with faith in the solitude of the mountains, not the spotlight of a stage. We talk to God while splitting firewood, not from behind pulpits. We reflect in a forest, not in crowded sanctuaries. And that's not rebellion. That's real manhood. Being a man who refuses to fake belief just to blend in. So if you've been hurt by the institution, but you still feel that inner fire, still crave truth, still find yourself searching for meaning, then don't let the failures of men define your relationship with God. He doesn't sit behind offering plates and fog machines. He's there, in the quiet, in the wilderness, in the knife you sharpen with reverence, in the axe you swing to warm your home. And he's not disappointed in your distance from buildings. He's watching how you live your life when no one's looking. And maybe, just maybe, that's where real spiritual strength begins. It's a strange comfort when you realize the campfire you sit beside, miles from anywhere, has brothers sitting by their own in different corners of the world. Same smoke rising, same quiet thoughts stirring. You might not see them, You might never shake their hand or share a cup of coffee, but they're out there. Real men. Strong men. Men with boots caked in mud, calloused hands, and hearts that still believe in truth, discipline, and purpose. They're fixing fences in Nebraska, running fishing lines in Maine, welding pipe in Texas, or delivering hay in Alberta. And they carry that same ache to stand firm in a world gone sideways. You're not as alone as you think. That quiet strength you carry, that worn-out feeling in your chest some nights when you're trying to fight back tears you never shed, there's someone else feeling it right now. Maybe he's on a long-haul route with a truck full of gear. Maybe he's out in the woods chopping firewood. Maybe he's up before dawn with a rifle slung over his shoulder and faith tucked somewhere deep inside. He might not be loud about it, but like you, he's carrying weight and doing it with honor. It used to be you needed a local circle to feel connected. Not anymore. You don't need to sit shoulder to shoulder in a church pew or drink at the same tavern every Friday night. The bond between like-minded men runs deeper than routine. It's about shared values, reflection, and living a life with meaning. It's the man who watches the world unravel and still holds the line. The one who teaches his son to use a knife responsibly, to get up after failure, to keep walking when a path turns steep. These men are scattered, but they are not divided. And together, even at a distance, they make up a brotherhood more real than any you'll find in a crowded room. Now and then, you meet one. Maybe he's the old mechanic who keeps to himself but always looks you in the eye, or the younger guy who works quietly but knows how to treat a horse and respect a woman. You trade stories. And suddenly, without saying much, you recognize each other, not by words, but by presence, by how he handles responsibility, by how he faces fear without drama. And in that moment, you realize you've known each other all along, because you're cut from the same cloth. Warriors, providers, husbands, protectors, different roads, same legacy. So when the noise of the world tells you you're the last of a dying breed, remember this: we are everywhere. We're in the mountains, in the saddle, by the campfire, in the factories, in the barns, walking through this life with quiet pain and unshakable faith. You just haven't met us yet, but we're here, and we're not backing down. Which brings me to the next thing we've got to talk about. Because this kind of connection doesn't just happen by accident. You've heard me talk long enough today, but now it's your turn to take a hard look in the mirror. What are you going to do with all this? Just nod along and move on with your day? Or are you finally going to reach out, say something, take that risk, and open the door to connection? We weren't meant to walk this life in silence. Real manhood isn't about staying stoic just for the sake of pride. It's about carrying the weight, yes, but also recognizing when it's time to share the load. Maybe you don't need to change your whole world right now, but what if you just started by noticing the guy at the hardware store who looks as worn out as you feel? What if you said something kind, even if it was small? So I ask you, how many good men, strong men, are out there just like you, but keeping quiet because they think no one would understand? Could you be the one to break that cycle? I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, where are you from? And what's one value you're holding on to that the world seems to have forgotten? And if this message struck something deep inside, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. not just to follow another video, but to keep this fire going. This isn't just a channel, it's a brotherhood. And here, you're not alone.